I didn't actually switch to PC gaming. PC gaming is slop. PC gaming is one of the most overrated things in the gaming industry right now, if not the most overrated, because it feels like in the online gaming space, it's condensed with people who want to try and gaslight you into thinking PC gaming is some amazing experience with like all these like amazing games, but in reality, everything's available on Switch 2. Everything's available on other platforms. With PC, you are just paying more money for an experience that's about the same level of quality. That's the reality of it. Every cope people have about like mods and ROMs and stuff like that, it takes time for stuff like that to happen. So you are better off buying a mid-range PC that can do like all the work stuff you want to do, all the video editing you want to do, all like the creative stuff you want to do. Like you're better off getting something like that instead of like a more overpriced like gaming piece. Like it's just not cost effective. And this is obvious if you look into like the cost of PC parts and like try to build one yourself or like, go to pre-built try to find a pre-built company. Like PC gaming just cannot compete with Nintendo consoles. In a lot of ways, they can't even really compete with Xbox and PlayStation because if you think about it, there really aren't a whole lot of companies outside of like maybe Blizzard that have like a really dedicated focus on like PC development, right? And that's only because of their like ongoing things like WoW. Like Overwatch was a console thing. That also came out on Switch. Like it's very clear what's happening with the PC like space is that like there's no reason not to release their games on the much more affordable console platforms. There will never be a time in which game development studios will not support consoles. Like they're not just going to stop like developing games for PlayStation and Xbox just because. Like um, like usually if they don't develop for our platforms, it's because of like exclusivity deals or like some behind the scenes things. Like if anything, I would say like PC gaming in general, like the development space, like that is the most likely thing to be cut from like these big major AAA products, other than like the Nintendo version, obviously, because PC just isn't as good as a console. Like you have to keep upgrading your hardware. You have to optimize it. Like I heard with Doom: The Dark Ages that like there were a ton of problems on the PC version, and this is a very reoccurring thing in this community. Like, why exactly would I invest $3,000 into a gaming PC and then have to deal with like Doom: The Dark Ages refusing to work properly? You know what I mean? Like this idea that like the experience is somehow superior is completely unfounded. Like, how is it better? Like, what games are you playing? Um, like, how good are they? Like, people can talk about like, Claire Obscure or like Black Myth Wukong all they want, but those games are available on console as well. It's just one of those things. Like, and one of the things they always do is like bring up piracy. They try and say that like, wow, you can emulate Nintendo games. No, you can't. You can't just download games offline. Like you have to own physical copies of the games, and then you have to rip them in a very specific way. Like if you've ever looked at like Dolphin's FAQ on how like you're legally supposed to rip games, like you're technically supposed to connect your PC to your Wii and like to your homebrewed Wii, and then like rip the games from the console onto your PC. It's like nobody does that. Like nobody does that. And if you did, you still paid money for the Wii. You still paid money for the game. So like at that point, like what benefit exactly are you getting out of gaming on a PC? Like what benefit are you getting from pirating Nintendo games? Like people love to say that like, well, oh, well, I'm getting it for free, but it's not the ideal version. You like it's gonna crash. You're gonna have issues. You're gonna have some kind of problems. Like everyone does this, and like it's just the reality of the situation is that like the idea that like this is some mythical get out of jail free card that they can just kind of like do whatever they want on PC is just completely unfounded. And I think that's becoming like more and more evident, you know. Like, you know, people keep like one of the big things recently, like, oh, we have PC ports of Star Fox 64 and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And like that just begs the question of like, well, you spent the past 20 years propping up emulation of N64 versions. And second of all, like those games are 30 years old anyway. So like again, this idea that like, oh, we have ports, we have PC ports of these then like 30-year-old Nintendo games. Like that's not gonna be a draw to your platform. You know, oh, we configured the game so it works in a way that it wasn't originally intended. So you're saying that it's unbalanced and that like it's not true to the creator's original vision and it's some like, you know, fan fiction, alternate reality bullshit. Like, you know, it's like all the copes as to like to justify things like PC being superior are just complete fabrications and really do need to be addressed as just being like completely out of touch with reality. You know, like you are better off just getting a console if you're only interested in playing games. You know, PCs have their purpose, you know, they can do things, but it's like every other piece of technology, right? You know, the iPhone did not replace a watch because it has a clock on it. You know, people don't like it when you pull out your phone to check the time. So, like, yeah, watches stayed very relevant because of just how much more intuitive and interesting they are to use. And it's true that, like, you know, Apple invented the iWatch, you know, which is, you know, because they understood this like cultural thing. But like it's like with consoles, right? Like why like I would much rather pay a lower price point for the same experience on a dedicated gaming platform than like, you know, spending all this money and space and like just time on like building a gaming PC. You know, Nintendo consoles are superior to even the greatest of gaming PCs because gaming PCs will never ever be legally able to play a Nintendo game. And by the way, they are cracking down on piracy and emulation. So, like, the golden age of piracy from like the 2000s is already long over. You know, we've already kind of seen studies about this, about how kids aren't getting into piracy anymore because so many of these things are like more easily obtainable and like, you know, all the giga copes that people used to throw around back in the day. It's all falling apart at the seams, right? The Switch 2, in a lot of ways, I think is going to be kind of the last stand of this kind of nonsense because the idea that people will just magically stop supporting Nintendo hardware because of the almighty PC is completely and utterly unfounded. And the, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to prove that. I I am switching from a gaming PC to a Nintendo Switch 2.